Hello, and welcome to another Friday at Cardboard Alchemy, or whenever you're watching this, because you don't have to join us exactly on Fridays. But if you're here, welcome. I am Peter Vaughan at Cardboard Alchemy, and we're going to be talking about board games. I mean, we're going to talk about what we're going to play this weekend. We're going to talk about worker placement specifically because, and maybe engine building, because we have a special guest on the stream, which is Laurie, recently joined the team at Cardboard Alchemy. And then we're going to be talking about our games. If you want to talk about Flamecraft Duels or Critter Kitchen, Flamecraft, or even Andromeda's Edge or its expansion, because of course with Luke here, we're going to talk about Andromeda's Edge Genesis. Let me bring Luke on right now. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Hey,
or evening, or whenever you're watching this, right?
We also have Rosie in the comments. She's back from her tournament, and she will be making sure your questions get answered. So if you have any specific questions for Luke, we're going to get to that. This is week 1, Luke, on the job, officially.
Holy smokes. Yeah, it's day 5. I mean, well, we technically had Juneteenth off. I was glad to work for a company that recognizes that. And yeah, it's been great. I'm working on games all the time, and got to do a lot with Andromeda's Edge. Got to, be welcomed as part of the team, and it's really great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's about time. I have this one article that I'm going to share with you that you wrote over 9 years ago. I think it's 9 years ago, where you said, I don't want to work in the business.
Uh-oh.
That article. So I'm glad to see that you came around to it.
It took a decade. I mean,
it took some time.
And that's true of everything we do in this industry. Right. The good stuff takes time. It's an extremely time-consuming process to see a game all the way through, and I've stuck with it. I think when I very first started design work, it was, I think, 13 years ago now.
Wow.
And so it took me that long, whatever, I have 5 published games now, and that slow evolution to finally walk away from the day job.
Yeah, I actually counted 6. I don't know if you're counting Stones of Fate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 6. We'll get more, and I'm excited to make more with you. Of course, the other thing to talk about is your development role on Flamecraft Duels, because I don't know if you've been credited on one for development before that.
I haven't. I've helped in the development of all of my games.
Sure. Yeah.
From the very beginning, I worked with James Matthey on the Manhattan Project Energy Empire, and Minion Games was basically a team of one, and so Tom Jolly and I did a lot of the development work on that. And prior to that, I worked with Jeff Cornelius and his brother on Stones of Fate. And it was very much, all hands on deck. So development has been part of my design work the whole way through, including when we got to work together on Dwellings of Eldervale and Andromeda's Edge. I
feel like you were always there in development, whether you knew it or whether it was a conscious thing or not.
Well, what's interesting is I've talked to so many designers who, over the years, like their approach was always, I build it, I put it in the box, I hand it over, I walk away.
Right.
And they would not see the project through to the end. And sometimes that's good. Like sometimes the publisher handles that baby with care. And then sometimes they don't like how it turned out, but they might not have been there through that process. I've been lucky that the publishers I have worked with both wanted me to be involved, and then we're simultaneously pushing the project forward, but also consulting with me throughout, so that it was always my work and the work of my co-designers.
Yeah, I did ask a question. I shared this on Board Game Design Lab Facebook group, and there was a question from Chris Backey that said, how many times do you take a game how many times does a publisher change one of your designs, right? And I was like, I think I could make a much shorter list with how many times do we not change a design. Because I was actually trying to, because I ultimately touched about 40 games at Breaking Games, and I could count on one hand the number that went through the process just as is. And I don't think there's that many that could possibly do that. And so definitely it's great if a publisher wants to be the one to take all of those steps to bring it to product. But I think if you could find an invested designer, and we've been very lucky working with you, I think if you can find that person who cares about the end goal, it's always going to be a better partnership, a better product, a better result than if it's another reason why demoing at cons, if you can get the designer there, and this is something that Breaking Games knew, is that you're going to get a much more passionate representative of the game, not only more knowledgeable but also passionate. You're going to translate that to the fans of the game better. So the same thing goes with development, I think. If the designer can be invested, every time, even, and Manny does this as well. Manny cares a lot about what the game turns out like. And sometimes that leads to him pushing for something that I would never have done as the developer or as the producer of that game. I would not have done that. But then I hear his point of view, and then I go, and sometimes I agree and sometimes I don't agree. And then we end up figuring out what is the best answer.
Well, as I'm designing, I feel like I have this explosion of ideas, and these ideas take me in all the different directions. But at some point, I create kind of a border, a bubble, and I say to myself, everything inside here is something that I can work with, something that is still subject to change. We can do anything we want as long as it's inside this box.
Yeah.
And then when I work with a developer, like a really creative developer like Peter Vaughan, all of a sudden he's like, well, there's the bubble, but then there's all these little side bubbles we could look into, or what if the bubble actually has a hole in it and then we explode it out of this direction?
What if we go the other direction?
and it's almost like he pushed me in a way. It was like, my first reaction is, what? No, we can't possibly do that.
Yeah.
And then we find some way to like create a bridge between these ideas, and we find some kind of compromise where we can hit all those marks in a way that doesn't break everything, doesn't destroy everything. And that can be a big challenge.
I think it's important to understand the bubble that you want first, right, before I try and break it.
I try to accept that my concept of the game is not necessarily the best concept. It might be close. I have my ideas of what I want to include, but that shiny side bubbles,
deluxified shiny side bubbles. That's what they are.
Yeah. Sometimes they're just angles I didn't consider, and ultimately what I want to be part of making a game that's as good as it can be for as many people as could find it. And so finding different on-ramps to that experience, thematically and mechanically, and how streamlined it is, all of those things matter in terms of how the product is received.
Absolutely. All right, so what I want to do, we're gonna get to questions, but I'm gonna look at something you wrote for the League of Game Makers. Let's see if we're gonna find this. 1 second.
Well, side note, while you're bringing up the League of Game Makers, we now have
4.
How many is it? We have 4 League of Game Makers.
So we're basically rebuilding the League of Game Makers here at Cardboard Alchemy.
So it's myself, Peter, Chris, and Brad.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a couple things. First of all, I'm going to read the 10 things you learned in your first 5 years as a game designer. We're going to see how you think about those things now that you're in year 13 of a game designer. And then
this was 9 years ago.
You wrote this in 2016. These are the 10 things you learned in your first 5 years as a game designer, and we'll see what you think. And then we'll go into some worker placement games where we think it's really working. Not necessarily yours. Could be. We could talk about that. We'll talk about Andromeda's Edge Genesis, and then we'll get to questions. So you said, number one, know your style, which I think is very true. I think you just honed this even further from what you wrote here, which is that you don't go for party games, even though you could make one. You honed in on a very specific type of game, right? And do you feel like that's still the way you want to go now?
So now that I have potentially more time to focus on games specifically, I like all kinds of games.
Yeah.
I like party games. I like social deduction, tradery kinds of games. I like word games. I like spatial games. I like high conflict games, and I
Yeah.
like stripped Euros. I really like all style games. I think it's less the style and more the specific game
Yeah.
that'll be whether or not I enjoy it. Um,
You wrote, I seem to have a knack for building medium heavy Euro-esque strategy games.
so I will confirm that I definitely know my style.
Okay, there we go.
Will I branch out and go in different directions? Will I do a is it no. I'm totally blanking. Code names. Vlada? Isn't that a
Vlada
Vlada
shot.
game?
Yeah,
So
Vlada
like
shuttle.
Vlada's historical games were just like these super complex, wonky Euros, where it was like every time you sat down to play, you had to completely learn a new mechanic. And then he comes out with code names, and you can
Yeah.
buy it anywhere, and it's an incredible game. Like, what will be Luke Laurie's code names? I don't
Right.
know.
And then of course, Rosie posts cozy games. Is that what your new
Oh yeah,
style is?
I mean, we've talked about an idea for a game
Yeah.
that I think could be quite cozy. It's low
Nice.
conflict and fun, and it would
Yeah,
be a lighter, medium weight worker
that's
placement
fine.
game
We can do that. We got some
on
fans of
the
that.
edge of my style. Yeah.
Your second point was choose a role, and this is the thing I alluded to earlier. You said,
Mm.
early on, I figured that I just want to design games. I don't want to be a publisher. I'm not seeking employment in the industry. You need to know what role you play in this field, which I think you've decided there's a new role that you could play in this field, which is exciting to me.
And so for over a decade, that role has most definitely been design first.
Yeah,
Secondarily, I have worked on the development of my own games. Tertiary, though, I always had a third role, which is that I ran playtesting events.
sure.
Um,
It's true. You're an
so I
event
ran a lot of
coordinator.
these Bay Area playtesting events, and big part of that was kind of cultivating the the environment to foster new ideas.
Yeah,
So I think that leads into thinking about being a developer, because a big part of being a developer is being a good playtester, being able
solid.
to put
Yeah,
together playtest teams, being able to take the feedback, being able to, separate yourself from the emotion and focus on the intention. Um, yeah, so I don't think being a developer is that big of a leap
nope,
from the skills that I've been building over this time.
that's true. So you're allowed to wear 3 hats.
And
Possibly more, but just reduce the hats is all you're
yeah,
saying. Point.
Cardboard Alchemy is the potions have a lot of ingredients, and I know
That's
the
right.
hats are going to be, yeah, we're going to be Mad Hatters, and I have been
That's
playing some Wonderlands War lately, so that's
You're
appropriate.
ready for that. The third point you said is there's a lot of competition out there. This is the golden age of tabletop games. This is what you
Mm.
wrote in 2016, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon. There is no shortage of good designs, novel ideas, and creative twists. To be a successful designer, you need to play a lot of games to know what's on the market, know what the trends are, and then innovate. That's true, I think. Still very true.
I would write the exact same thing today, and
Right?
then like this is really amazing because I don't remember writing this piece at all. So it's really fun. I am right now in a position where I I haven't had enough time to play
Yeah,
games. But like really last 6 years, I thought maybe as COVID and things changed, I might be able to get more games in. And essentially, I was doing two full-time jobs these last several years,
yeah,
and
seriously.
that is the full work in the design world. And I was a teacher for almost 3 decades. And so the hats thing, I was wearing so many hats that one of the things I did not do was I didn't really get a feel for all of the new and great games that are out there. I buy them, I
Yeah,
back the Kickstarter, and then they sit there and shrink wrap. And I am lucky that I have a few friends when I've been able to arrange it, like they can teach me some new games. But this
yeah,
is absolutely something that as a developer, I think
we're gonna add.
it's vital for what
Yeah.
the work that I do. I've got to know everything
Well,
that's out there.
and you just talked about playing Wonderland's War, which you got to, and then just yesterday you were telling me you wanted to get to Altiplano, which I'm very excited for you to see.
Yeah.
We got to play that as well. So there is definitely a lot. We're going to kick this into high gear at this particular point.
We just pulled the shrink off of, and my friend Thomas was reading the rules of Galactic Cruise, and so
Oh, you're going to
we're
love
getting
that
ready to
game.
go cruising too.
Nice. Your fourth point was go to game design events and conventions. All this competition does not mean you should be designing alone in a cave for fear that others are going to steal your idea. You should get to events, let's see, protospiels, conventions, be part of the community. It's a great community, which is definitely true.
And this is like the number one piece of advice I still give to people today.
Yeah,
You'll see people out there on the internet and just kind of like, casting a line out into the water, hoping that someone will read their post, and they're like, I've been working on a game, and now what do I do? Do I go to
yeah,
Kickstarter? How do I make this better? And a lot of folks really don't have a sense of like how the industry works. They don't really know what it would mean to self-publish, and they don't really understand what it would mean to get signed with a publisher. And the best way of learning those things is just go right on over to these events where the room will be full of
yeah, seriously.
published and unpublished designers, developers, publishers, and they can just learn it by being in these folks' presence. Admittedly, that for some folks that does require kind of some shifts in like social comfort.
Yeah,
It might not be their natural thing to be in large groups of people, but what I've found is that the design community specifically is a very inclusive group of folks, and they tend to help people feel welcome and comfortable in that environment. The
yep.
focus is on the games, but a lot of folks end up becoming really great friends. And I have tons of great friends that I've gotten through being involved in that community.
A specific thing that I see that I want to mention because I've been running a first play LA now for over 10 years. And that has been like a week, not a weekly. Yeah, at one point it was weekly. Now it's a monthly design event. And what I've seen as a recent trend is that people tend to come and try and use the event for their bubble, their thing, without embracing the entire event. In other words, they try and come play a game and get all of the feedback without first coming and listening and being part of feedback. And actually, if you go to one of those events, you can learn a lot if you're open to not being head down trying to get just what you want out of it, but instead finding out that the person next to you has 6 published games and they've been through this rodeo a couple times. You know what I mean? So,
Well, it's like a bubble, and then what they got to do is they've got to get the little shiny side bubbles
right?
and
It
recognize.
100%. Some
Um,
people have come through those events and they come right when their Kickstarter is about to launch. They try and get people without engaging the community. But if you actually sit down in the community and then when it's time for you to launch your project, you're going to find a lot of built-in supporters and fans ready to go. Like having seen the game before, having seen what you've presented, who you are.
and there are different styles to these events.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
one of the reasons why I worked to create the style of event that we ran for many years in the Bay Area conventions. These are design development rooms within a larger game convention. So these have been held at Pacificon, Celesticon, KublaCon, RageCon,
We're about to
and
go to
Tundra.
RageCon next week,
Yeah,
right?
next week, and there will be an event like this that Johnny Pack and others run up there. But
Yeah.
the different modes are, they can be pretty significant in people's experience, because if you go to some conventions, and I don't know which ones are doing this now, some of them will basically, they'll charge you a fee and assign you a table for a time period, and you're essentially sitting at a table with your game, and random people come through.
Right.
That's a totally different experience than what we created in these Bay Area conventions, where it is tables cycle. Whoever is, at the table, the expectation is people come and play, and then when you're done, you go play other people's games, and it's supposed to be kind of an exchange of play testing. Plus, we open it up so that all the folks at the convention can come in and see the latest and greatest in the future great games that are being made. And it creates more of a true social environment, because, social environments that are strong originate from the generosity, and the kind of the shared experience. And so hopefully folks who are new can find something like that, where it has that sense of comfort being involved and included, that they can learn from the others while they're there.
Absolutely. So we're still going over your top 10 things you learned in your first 5 years as a game designer. Number 5 is making good games takes time. I've been designing games for about 5 years, you wrote at the time, and you have 2 published games, only 2. One was Stones of Fate, and one was the Manhattan Project Energy Empire.
And the rate that people ask me, what's the rate? I say 4 years.
It takes 4 years to kind of
typically 1 to 2 years of design, then 2 years of development and publishing.
Yep.
That's typical. And that's 4 years to make a game.
4 years to make a good solid game. We have had some exceptions. I love when, we look at Dwellings. Dwellings was 7 years, a little bit on the long side. I look at Flamecraft Duels. Flamecraft Duels was one of the fastest concept to. I mean, if we pull off the delivery of Flamecraft Duels this fall, it'll be probably a year. So it depends on the scope of the game, but 4 years is a good solid one for Luke's types of games.
And Duels was really fun and interesting to work on. I was pretty stoked to be involved in that, and I wasn't sure how much time I would have because I was still teaching, but I was really grateful to get to work with you and Manny on that project.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Number 6, you wrote, you can sign with the publisher. We were just talking about this. You can sign with the publisher and still have a significant influence. Some people go straight to self-publishing because they fear a publisher will ruin their precious design. They're not willing to give up control. My experiences with Cosmic Wombat and Minion taught me that under the right conditions, you can work with a publisher and influence the product. So that's what we were talking about.
You can, and it doesn't have to be through threats and duress. You can work with the publisher a lot of times. I haven't had a difficult time with that at all, really. The publisher that I was the least involved with was when I worked with Z-Man on making Cryo, and partly that was because they wanted to publish the game essentially as it was. So that's what they did. They published it essentially almost unchanged mechanically. They changed the theme, but almost unchanged mechanically. So I do believe that. And also, this is a matter of perspective. They ruined my game. Some folks, they attach themselves to the tiniest little details of their work. And changing those things for that person could feel like they ruined my work. It's not my vision or something like that. Whereas if you're focused more on the big picture of what you want to accomplish for the game, you can have it be improved. But not always. Publishers can screw up games. They can.
I'm not going to confirm or deny that. So
Yeah.
this one is one of my favorite points of the entire thing because it just happens to be aligned with my personal vision. Sometimes more components can actually make a design simpler. I love this sentence for everything it tries to assert. It says this might be counter to what you've heard elsewhere. There's a lot of emphasis these days on trying to get that leaner, more elegant design and a efficient product, which is not a bad thing. Aiming for efficiency is great. Sometimes low-cost games skimp on components to the point of detracting from gameplay. So this is not more components is not always best. It's not always sensible, but the right components can make a game more playable and less taxing on players. It's an interesting one.
There's an analogy to a line I wrote way back which was sometimes you need to cut the fat, and sometimes you need to wrap it in bacon.
That's a great sentence.
Yeah.
Oh man, we need bacon for sure. 100%
So
wrap it in bacon.
Peter, I know, leans on the wrap it in bacon side of things.
I do. So my
but
downfall.
Sometimes the perfect dish isn't always more ingredients. And so it's like finding that flavor palette. This is true both mechanically and with components, because with components, one real easy example is, you can have a little track for resources.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of games that work like that, but it means that you sit there like windshield wipers, moving your little track up and down. If the game doesn't involve very many movements of that might make sense. But if the game is one where every turn you're going to be like spending two, getting one, spending another one, spending two, and you're just like moving the track back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just having bits for those absolutely makes the whole experience better. Yeah. It also adds that tactile experience and the kind of what it does to your brain when I got something.
Oh, I think in Andromeda's Edge, if Andromeda's Edge, I look down and I see that I have about 5 energy, and I could feel that I have 5 energy, I feel invincible in the next fight. I feel like I can go take my ship anywhere, and I just like, let's bring it on. I got the energy for it. I think the tactile nature of seeing that, and if I have credits or ice, I feel like, oh, I can tangibly see how I could go buy something. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so there's that. This is one of those balance things, finding that balance of
the genesis of the dwelling
roof.
I mean, that's interesting, because you could say, hey, I have built a dwelling, I don't need to record this on the board.
Throw the meeple away, put on the little Monopoly house.
Yeah,
that would have been no fun, right?
Yeah. So the next point you had was collaborate. Let's see, I've never had that magical connection with a collaborator where we see eye to eye, but I found that working with someone with similar interests who's also critical of my work will make my work better. Tom Jolly and I have completed 2 successful projects together, and this is before Cryo had become a thing. But I'm always impressed by your ability to collaborate, because there is a tendency, I think, to not want to compromise on your vision. But I think if I was to look at anyone in this industry who's shown the power of collaboration, most of your designs are collaborations, right? Most of them?
They are. And I think on most of them I did take the lead as well, but probably the most notable exception of that would be, I would say that Scott Caputo and I had a pretty even distribution of our responsibilities on Whistle Mountain. And as a result, it's probably the game that is the most different. Like, he is very into this, like the spatial and the tile and the geometry of things, and I learned a lot from working from him. We're still trying to work on other projects too. But what I've found is, I mean, I've been married for 30 years too. This is a part of it too. I'm a better person because of my partners, because of my spouse. I'm a better I'm a better designer because of the work that I've gotten to do with co-designers. We all have our blind spots. We all have our shortcomings, and having that second set of eyes, and also having someone on board who really cares about the work, um,
Yeah.
keeps keeps it from falling apart. If I
Yeah.
if I lose interest or time, or I just can't get there, and my co-designer can, we're going to be able to carry it across the finish line much more easily. If I hit a slump, it's possible the co-designer will come in with inspiration that'll take us out of that kind of that rut.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Collaboration makes better work.
Show the mug. Nice. Look at
See?
that.
And
Yeah.
the timing, Mike Vanderveen, good timing.
Your number 9 point you learned in your first 5 years of being a game designer is have a regular playtesting group, which is something absolutely. You said, I've maintained a solid regular development team that would meet and playtest every week or two. This team is incredible. They're not all designers. They have different playing styles, but they are the target for medium heavy strategy games that I like to make. So you built your group for the games you are making.
And I've been a little busy, so my folks they're splintered. But it's one of my first tasks that I'm really enjoying is
Yeah.
I'm
Put the
putting
band
together
back
my
together.
list of all my folks who have play tested games all in the past. Some of them have moved to different geographic regions, and that's also kind of interesting too, because I can find these pockets, these bubbles where it's like, oh, I've got a full range of playtesters here in the Bay Area. I think I might have to take a trip up to San Francisco and spend a weekend and do some great
Yeah.
playtesting. Um,
Well, if you want
so
to build the Los Angeles Burbank group with me, then we'll have that as well. I gotta build it back myself. I had one for a while, and then I also need to build it again.
you have incredible playtesters and so many creative folks and designers down in that area. I absolutely want to be a part of that. But yeah, keeping in touch with those people, and making sure that you're not overusing or abusing these folks, like just using them for playtesting your games. You gotta balance out this experience. We're gonna play other games this other time. We're gonna do some social stuff, and then when I need a play test, I've got folks I can call. They'll show up for me.
Nice. All right, here's your last point, the things that you learned in your first 5 years. I'm gonna read this entire one because it's really good and it's a short one. The title of it is Failure is the Norm. So you wrote, most of my work will not be published. And this sentence is funny. You wrote, honestly, most of my work isn't very good. Frequently, I take good designs and rebuild them and make them worse. But that's how art works. That's how science works. We take what we know, we experiment, we fail, we learn, we get up, we try again. I keep at it because I love the act of creation. I love the thinking, the problem solving, the imaginative exploration. I don't quit because I love what I'm doing, and I know the best games are yet to be made, which is possibly one of the first times you coined that sentence.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
And now Cardboard Alchemy has hired me, and they're hoping I'm going to backtrack on number 10. They're like,
Exactly.
I don't know about this failure is the norm thing. So yeah, we certainly can't have every day be a failure and that be the
Right,
norm,
right.
right? So it's more of an idea about how tightly we hold to our ideas, because ideas to become great ideas have to evolve. You know, um, I'm sure Einstein, sitting around considering the theory of relativity, didn't just start with the theory of relativity,
Sure, that was it. No, first right out of the
right?
gate.
There's this trope, of these mathematicians and scientists with these chalkboards, just like the sweats dripping down the forehead, and they're just like, they haven't eaten in days, and they're staring at it like, I can't figure it out, and that frustration. And I feel like with design work, and I know this is true with development work, there's going to be a lot of bumps on that road. It's not a smooth, clean road. And it's also not one where you can see the end. Like we know we're on this road. We know we've got some things to work with, but we don't know what the changes are going to be. And we have to be both protective of the things that we see as valuable, but we also have to be a little loose with our ideas and accept that things are going to evolve. Because if they don't evolve, we're never going to get there. We're never going to get to that final, ultimate, potentially, quite a bit better work than what we started with.
It's interesting. Mike says, internal failure, maybe limiting the public failures is the key. Although I want to comment to that, because I sit awake at night thinking about if I've made the best Andromeda's Edge. And sometimes I listen to the people who critiqued the dwellings trays, and then I tried a different kind of tray on Andromeda's Edge, which wasn't necessarily I don't know that we nailed it. I think we nailed the game, but there's this idea that every game has to come out perfect, and I put it on myself. Like, no, the process might take several. I mean, we're still honing. Our like Cardboard Alchemy is 5 years old. Even though I've been in the industry for longer than that, there's still a learning curve on the. We got to iterate. We have to try things. We have to innovate. And sometimes my response to a BGG post is, I was trying something. Like, I was trying something because I'm trying to attack efficiency of a game in a box, which, isn't going to necessarily come out 100% perfect. We're going to try some things and then see if they come out right. And then if they don't, we're going to keep trying that to innovate a different way. Right. But as far as on game design goes, I know that this is something that I remember when I was getting into writing. A lot of books would say just write a page, regardless of whether it's good writing, because you're not going to get the best writing out on the first page. You have to train your brain not to stop and wait for that perfect sentence to come out. You have to just write a bunch of sentences until you learn the structures that do create the sentences that you like, that are really great. And if your brain's stopping you from putting that to paper because you're worried it's going to be the perfect sentence, you will not get to the perfect sentence.
And the iteration is key. Like, and this is an area where it's like we have conflicting goals, right? Because you want to iterate, and you want to iterate the maximum number of times, but you need to get this done. You need to move on to other projects, and there's only so much you can do practically in terms of energy and time. One of my design practices is I use a lot of these spiral notebooks, and I literally will write paragraphs of conceptual ideas, thematic ideas, draw pictures, sketches, lists, and then pages later, I might do the same thing again. Like, I want to think about that drawing, and I start doing the drawing, and it's the same drawing I did a few pages back, but this time it comes out a little different, and some other idea is inspired just through that iteration. But yeah, it's a learning process. And one of the things too is we have to accept that sometimes we did the best. We already actually hit that part the best. And maybe we got to stick with something too. It's hard to know, because you always feel like something can be better, something can be improved.
By the way,
but with every change, every change can potentially come with some kind of liability.
Tom Vassal made me doubt the trays. I still love I love everything about Andromeda's Edge and what we made. And we're going to talk about Genesis maybe for a minute. But I definitely look at, now the thing that Brad's commented on before is that because of the production of a game, let's say you make game A and then you learn a lesson in the production of game A, but you've already started game B and you don't get to see its result until C. the lesson learned in A might not come back around to the development of D, right? Because you've actually got this cycle of how games keep getting made. And so
Mhm.
I needed to see Andromeda to understand where I might be going after Dwellings and Andromeda, because it's like I needed to see first I needed to see like on Dwellings, I needed to see what it was like when you put the standard inside a giant box. And the standard customers would say, I don't want a giant box. So then for Andromeda, I do think of one of the key lessons that we did learn and implemented was that the standard edition was a smaller, compact box, and it was more affordable. That's why we have 10 language partners on Andromeda's Edge, because we made an affordable base game product. And I feel like that was a key part of that. But then in doing so, I think our bloated product was heavily bloated. So I really have to now consider the mid-range potentially. It's an interesting challenge all around. By the way, we also had Evan comment, excited for your new career move, Luke, and have a blast.
Thank you, Evan.
There's so
I
many.
hope to enjoy some late night hours with you at Essen again.
So let's talk about Andromeda's Edge Genesis, because while we're getting Whisperwood ready for you to work on as a developer, we've got this game you've already made with Maximus, and as you've had some days of time to now sort of like, I've seen the post where you and Maximus are digging in hard on Genesis. How has that been? I mean, we haven't shared a lot yet, and we're going to share a lot more with the community soon. And Mark's here. He's ready for it. What do we want to talk about Genesis?
So, because all these streams have been happening while I've been at work, teaching junior high students science, I don't know all the spoilers you have revealed. So I have to be a little cautious. I could potentially reveal something you didn't want to reveal.
Well, let's do this. No, I don't. I think you're okay. We are about to reveal a lot on the Game Found. So if you're not already following the Game Found, we're going to start writing some updates over there. But why don't we talk big picture about what types of things are in Genesis, because that won't necessarily spoil anything, and it will give everyone some idea of what's going to be in this expansion.
Well, from kind of a boring engineering side of things, we wanted to build an expansion that would fit in the box.
Yes.
And so there were design constraints that are physical design constraints about the types of components we could choose. Then
have we violated that? Maybe, but we started there.
I think we're only going to have issues with people who sleeve cards.
Correct.
I think everybody else can be okay. There might be some compromises for folks who sleeve cards.
Yeah.
And then thematically, and in terms of like gameplay and game flow, what we really wanted to bring to the game was more dynamics in terms of how we take advantage of this beautiful hexagonal
Don't worry,
board.
you're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Don't worry.
I scared all the sleevers run away.
It's fine. This is fine. We'll have ideas of what to do with the cards. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you're going to attach a little. Oops.
One. Oh, did you lose audio?
Are we there?
I can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, these things are so smart. They sometimes do things you don't want them to. But we wanted to do more
up the entire chat, by the way. Oh no.
Okay. I can't keep up with the chat. It's running.
That's fine. Don't worry, everybody. Okay, we'll go over what kind of things are in there, but to talk more about.
Yeah, so we wanted to do more with the board.
Yeah.
So developing Andromeda, building your developments is fun and it's interesting and it's a high scoring thing. But for example, one of the things that you experience when you're playing Andromeda's Edge is, say I build a city, and it's cool when you build a city. It uses 3-year leaders, and you get points based on all the leaders. You feel great about it. It's big, it's powerful. Then you get a module of your choice. You just look around, you're just like, oh, I get one of these great modules, and you get to climb up 2 tracks at once. It's very powerful and fun. But the next person who builds a city, they do the same thing. And yes, it comes with choice. So we wanted to look at, so what if, you build a city and you actually got to do different things depending on where you were in your game and
Ooh.
how it was going. And so possibly you build this city and you get one benefit, and then another player builds a city and they're like, that benefit's not the one I wanted. This other benefit's going to, benefit me more. So now we're creating more like dynamics in terms of what is offered from the developments. And then we're doing
Ooh, you
more
here
with,
first, everybody. Hint number 1, new benefits.
and then we're also doing more with the tiles on the board. So if folks who've played a lot of Andromeda's Edge know that we have the quasars and the vortexes, the special regions. And when you build next to the special regions, that confers, a bonus for you because it was cool that you built next to them. So we've taken that to another level in that there are more ways to change the scoring of your development. So depending on where you build, in one circumstance, this area over here might not be a great place to build unless certain conditions are met. And that if you dial it in just right, you plan, you do the work, and then you have synergy with the play of other players, you might get a development that's worth a lot more points because of the circumstances of what's around it. And so this creates a little more interesting board dynamics and potential strategies to go into. It also tips the scoring a little bit. A lot of the scoring in Andromeda's Edge comes from your track positions, and it comes from the developments that you've built, and it comes from throughout the game, the periodic scoring of the tracks. Well, we're tipping the scoring a little bit so that now with all of these possibilities for scoring on the board, where and how you develop becomes even more important. And it's also something that you potentially don't want to drop the ball on.
Yeah.
Another
Now
factor is,
I must have revealed some things as Matthew's like shrine tiles, right?
who
Yeah.
how does he know about shrines?
Ancient shrines are going to be found in Andromeda's Edge.
Ancient shrines. I wonder if you could fly through the asteroid belt with the right resources and restore that shrine to its former glory. That would be epic. Except it might cause a shockwave and like blow up a bunch of ships.
Yeah.
But yeah, restoring that shrine would just this is the idea, like thematic ideas of Genesis are about like renewal and restoring and taking what was old and decrepit and bringing it back to life.
So what's funny is, we were talking, and just to assure some of the folks on the chat that are sleevers, when we were thinking about the box, I asked Noah at Game Trays right before we locked out production. I was like, "Is there room for a couple more tiles?" And he's like, "I can give you maybe 4 tiles worth of space." So this is not a sleeving thing. This is how many actual tiles are available before the next layer hits the stack. And so with those tiles, we're going to be using every possible tile space we can, which won't necessarily impact. I mean, everyone should be able to fit the new tiles in.
Right. They won't need to use the Dremel too many times to make
That's true.
I'm just kidding.
The whole chat is talking about sleeving and Cheetos, and then Chris is like, "Stop eating Cheetos." You don't have this. You don't have to sleeve if you just take away the Cheetos. Anyway, so Genesis has so new regions. We talked about new ways to score. Do we have any new factions? Is that going to be a thing?
Do we have new factions?
Is already ridiculous. We can't do more factions, can we? 3 more factions. I did give a little bit of a hint that not only are, something that's happened in Andromeda's Edge is that there are these factions that are cues to some of your former games and to some of the games we worked on together. And even there's a hint to one of Brad's games, Rise of Tribes, the allied tribes in Andromeda's Edge. And so this is the first time that you're going to do a forward-facing Easter egg to the future. You're just going to predict the future of another game that's coming.
Well, it
And
makes
that,
perfect sense
yeah, right.
because one of the factions is the precog hybrids.
Yep.
And if you think Minority Report, or you think of like the hybrids that were jumping the Cylon ships, these are people who are dialed into, the fabric of space and time, and as a result, they remember things that haven't happened yet. And one of the things that hasn't happened yet is Whisperwood.
Well, there we go, right
And
there. You've got
and so
precog hybrids have seen the future. In that future, a Whisperwood faction will come to life. It's amazing.
and we have a Whisperwood faction, and the part of the premise of Whisperwood is you have these druids in this magical mystical forest interacting with giant mechanical magical golems and restoring the woodlands because it's all corrupted. There's all this nasty arcane corruption all over everything. And so we have a faction built
This
around
is
that.
funny because Impy says a Critter Kitchen faction. I have been thinking about, is there any way we could get we have done a Flamecraft faction, for example, but I think that might be the one representative of the Sandara cartoony, her art style has been represented. I don't know that it makes sense to put chefs in space, but pigs in space. Maybe it'll happen someday, but we're not there yet.
Are we dishing on the third faction too?
Sure, yeah, you can talk about it because we're about to get real serious about announcing this game. So let's give this stream some of the heads up.
So, as you know, Maximus Laurie is a co-designer on this game, and today is his birthday.
Hey, happy birthday, Maximus.
One of the things that he loves to do on his birthday is stay sleeping. So I think he might be up by now. But yes, so Maximus is one of his favorite games of all time is Terraforming Mars.
Yeah, look at that.
So we have a new faction that is the Martian Terraformers. That's and awesome. Thematically, it does draw from the realistic sci-fi world of Terraforming Mars, but it also has some of that feel of like the Martians in The Expanse. So The Expanse is great because you essentially have humans have moved off to Mars, and in their time in Mars, they're very sophisticated with their science and their mechanics. They're making these epic discoveries. They're building ships that are better than the Earth ships. So yeah, we've got the Martian terraformers, and they're heading to the edge. They got there because Jupiter's Great Red Spot is actually a vortex, and they flew through Jupiter's Great Red Spot, accidentally found themselves on the edge of the Andromeda galaxy, and they do what they know. They start terraforming.
Yeah, right. Seriously, if you go to the GameFound page right now and you see the character that's flying with a little biome, that is the terraforming Martian terraforming faction art, and that faction so far has been somewhat. I mean, it's been declared OP. We are continuing to test these things out and see what happens. And usually, what Luke's been saying is when it's up against a previous faction, there's 18 of them. It can have a challenge. So that's one of the things we're trying to make sure is we build really powerful 3 new factions that can survive in space with all the other 18 factions. Not only survive, but thrive. And it's a lot of fun to test it.
And this goes back to when we were working on Dwellings of Eldervale. And I tended to have a tighter, more constrained mechanical approach to building my games prior and building that game. And Peter kept pushing me to can't you just making this a little stronger, a little more explosive? What if it just destroys everything? What if it you get all the stuff? And so we got to this level, this power level, where we arrived at this idea that everything is broken.
Yes.
And once you reach that everything is broken level, you can have these really powerful, explosive experiences, but the next player over there gets to do them too. And I watch this happen when I'm teaching both dwellings and Andromeda, and you just see people just look at you and they go, I can do that too?
Right.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me, right? I can play as many cards as I want.
Yeah.
Wait, I just
Seriously.
got all that stuff. I just ran this engine and used 16. I got 16 resources. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. So
One of
when we're
my
testing the factions, it's like they have to be strong to
Yeah.
match with the other existing factions.
Yeah, one of my favorite aspects of any engine building in Andromeda's Edge is one of the modules that lets you get another module. And if you can build that, thanks, Chris, that's needed every show. We need a Genesis shout out. But if you can get that module and you're running your engine and then you get to use that module, which adds another module, and then you get to use that module, it always seems like you're doing something illegal. Like this shouldn't be possible in the game. And every time it's like, nope, that's another one is metamorphosis modules, which are purple and can be assigned to any track, also have those half moon circles that the industry modules have. And when someone puts 2 of them in a science row, they're like, this is cheating, right? This shouldn't be allowed, right? I can't do this. And someone else is like, no, that is completely legit. You found one of the power plays of the game, right?
So it's been interesting to dig into the things we didn't do and
Yeah.
to find little areas where it's like, oh, this is a liability generally, but let's make it an asset for this faction.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun. There's something that we've been really focusing on a lot, which I had a conversation with Tim Chewin about. Now, Tim Chewin's review of he listed Andromeda's Edge as his #1 game of the year, which was an honor, and he's put it up as #1. It's not #1 game of the year. I'm sorry, it's #1 game of all time, and it's on his #1 list still, trying to find out if it's ever going to be dethroned. And what he said was the only thing that he wanted for this game is for you to have more interesting raider rewards and to potentially be able to take over a raider. And that is what Tom Vassell also said. So I'm really excited because we talk about internally pushing on our designs in order to make sure that they're what we want to make. But then externally, people push on the designs and say, wait a minute, it could do this. So is that coming?
No, never going to happen.
Okay. Well, we tried. What are we going
to do? Of course we're going to do that.
Yeah. Hey,
I mean, the customer
for coming by.
The customer isn't always right. But also, when there's things that you want, and then sometimes you're like, maybe you didn't really want that.
Right.
So no, we're not turning it over to just like, infinite power. You can't just get the infinite power. And we wanted to build some mechanics that made some just more interesting dynamics in terms of what rewards were and also your interactions with the raiders. So yes, there is the ability to commandeer raiders. It doesn't necessarily last forever, but it can give you some very, powerful fuel to work with when you are roaming around as a mortality sphere or
that's gonna be,
wreaking havoc with the ice pirates. And when you control these raiders, they do get to keep some of the powers, though modified slightly for player use. And then when you defeat raiders, you can choose to get the raider reward that's depicted on the raider, or you can ignore that reward and you can draw from the Exotech deck. So we have a whole new deck of cards that are special abilities that are
yes, you can join the Ice Pirates.
Tactics cards plus.
I am the Ion Storm. That's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
Ion Storm is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can get Exotech cards, and with Exotech cards, it's gonna unlock all these things that we said, nah, that's too powerful to put in the tactics card deck. That would break the game. But now there's this deck that everybody can draw from.
Yep. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I talked to Tim Chewin about potentially being involved. So if we'll have to make a video with Tim with maybe some more cards to unlock over at, if you go visit Tim's video, we're going to try and make an awesome video for Andromeda's Genesis. And we're going to start talking about all the things we just talked about in the campaign updates pre-launch. And we're going to go to Gen Con with Luke to have the game on the table, show the parts of Genesis. But of course, you can play earlier than that. If you come into our Discord and you want to get a sneak peek of Genesis, you can come in and try out some of these Exotech cards, try out the new regions, the new factions, and we'll be happy to see how you do with those. We have even more giant announcements for Genesis coming. We showed a sneak peek of the mat. The background behind us is actually another part of the mat. Some part of it that we showed was the new repair barge area on the mat that we're going to have. So we have a lot to talk about on Genesis. It started as a little expansion, I think, something that's like, hey, can we get a couple things that fit in the box? And it's turned into its own decent sized expansion that I think, and I've mentioned this before on the show, Luke, that you have now been quoted as saying that you would not play without Genesis.
It's I'm a little reluctant. I mean, we played a game earlier this week. We introduced Sarah. We played Andromeda's Edge, and that was a blast.
Still
it was fun,
right? Yeah. Still
good.
Even better now.
It does add a little bit of complexity, but the manner that the expansion comes in is fairly seamless, and it's not one of those ones where you're just going to play with module A or module B. You can just put all of Genesis right in there and just play with it, and it works.
Awesome. All right, well, we went a little over, so instead of going on to worker placement mechanisms of games that we've played that we really like, we'll just focus on the remaining questions. We can get that in another chat because Luke's here now. Hopefully he'll be on the show a couple more times.
Well, yeah, it won't be like a once a year thing anymore.
Right.
I'm around.
Here we've got one. At a glance, AE seems very complicated. Someone pointed out to me that it's effectively launching or returning. Basically, you only do one of two actions. Does a game begin with a simple idea like this, or do you think bigger and narrow it down to something like this? That's a good question.
So for me, that's a norm in my design. That's kind of my mechanical norm for several of my games is you're either going to put out a worker or you're going to return. And so I have several games that use this mode. And what I've found is that framework creates easily accessible games that can have within them built in all of these layers of complexity. So I mentioned like the on-ramps. This is an on-ramp to a complicated game. I could tell you every little nuance and every little detail, but if I say you're gonna put a ship out there and you follow a couple rules about where you can place it. Similarly, with Dwellings of Eldervale, you're gonna put a unit out there and then you're gonna do what it is. That mode makes games more accessible. And then I do start with all of these different ideas, but I've come back to that mode for the last few of my games.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I like the on-ramp is an important thing.
Cryo. Mike asked, Cryo was not a sci-fi theme. What theme change did Z-Man Games make? Well, Cryo was originally called Beyond Jupiter. And
sci-fi.
It was sci-fi. Peter played this original version. And Mike did a lot, I remember.
I wanted to publish it immediately.
We were at Tom Jolly's house. In any case, the thematic premise was that the four large moons of Jupiter, which are Ganymede, Io, Callisto, and Europa, they're planet-sized moons in the real world that orbit around Jupiter. The premise is that these were like bases, and that due to some kind of galactic anomaly, there was a comet storm. Some kind of gravitational disturbance had mixed up the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt, and comets are coming raining in from the outer solar system. They've obliterated Earth already. Earth's gone. There's no saving it.
Wow.
And now these comets are raining down on the four large moons of Jupiter. So in desperation, you put together these ships, you load your people onto the ships, and then you launch right into Jupiter's Great Red Spot, and you fly off to another galaxy and settle it.
Yeah.
That was the original theme of
What's
Cryo.
interesting about that one, by the way, I think I've told this story before, is that that was one of the first times Luke put in something what we would later call slotting in Dwellings of Eldervale, which is that you could change a card, you could change an action. Had not seen that too frequently, and then I loved it so much. Luke ended up putting it in the version of Dwellings that came to be, and then we got Dwellings out faster than Cryo. So we got slotting first.
Yeah, I
And
had a very strange experience where essentially Cryo, Whistle Mountain, and Dwellings of Eldervale all came out in the same year, and I designed them 2 years apart.
at different
Each of
times.
them.
Yeah, right. Matthew's asking about if Cryo will ever get an expansion, if you know the answer to that question.
The answer is no. So Cryo's sales have been extremely low the last couple of years. We'll see what happens if Cryo gets reborn in some form. I do not know. I do not know Cryo's future. I will check with the precogs on that.
Gotta check with the precogs. Yep. Ooh, what sci-fi movie and TV inspirations did you look into for Genesis?
Okay, well,
Anything new that you've discovered since designing Andromeda's Edge?
For the first part of that, make sure you go watch The Wrath of Khan if you have not.
This
Star
cute
Trek
line
2.
right now. Yeah.
Also for the fantastic soundtrack. Amazing performances. Yeah. I draw from all science fiction with Andromeda's Edge. So and I know somebody asked about what movie should you watch to get in the mood or something like that. I mean, there's Interstellar, there's Blade Runner, there's Minority Report, there's Star Wars, there's Star Trek,
Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica,
Yeah.
in there deeply. But I try to draw from all that, and then it also draws from non-science fiction as well. But I go to places in my head where I relive some of those things, and we did the same with Dwellings, where we wanted the feel of anything fantasy to be able to be possible when you're playing that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything
new you've discovered since design? Have you been watching any sci-fi lately that is post the original game coming out?
Totally, except that where am I? So The Foundation is fantastic, and that's on the
I agree.
Apple. Oh,
Rosie chimes in. Yes.
Hi, Rosie.
It's amazing.
For All Mankind, realistic sci-fi, alternate past, present, and future. That's also on Apple. It takes what if we would have lost the space race, and takes it through modern times, and even some of the characters in it are actually the names. They're real people in real life, and some of them are they're alive today, and they are characters in this show. It's kind of interesting, or at least they're close to their real counterparts. I know there's others. But
I love how Andromeda has become like you can't pinpoint it, right? There's people who have said this is what Andromeda feels like to me, but Andromeda's colorful, and it's expansive, and it has factions that are sentient fungi, and they're this and they're that, and there's terraformers that are going to be coming. It just has it has a little bit of everything, and it feels like exactly what I was hoping it would feel like, which is all of them brought together.
And what's funny is, so we built the Funganar Sporgots faction. Originally, I built that before I even understood or knew about The Last of Us. I did not know that there was a whole world that existed with these sentient fungi tormenting civilization. I did know about the Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek. Is it Discovery? Where they have like a drive that's built upon a fungus network that's at the underpinnings of subspace, the fabric of subspace. So you actually communicate and travel through fungus, interstellar fungus, mycelium network.
It's all good, by the way, Matthew, about the shrines. We're going to be talking about Genesis like right now. So we're going to tell a lot more about the shrines. This is a question about whether or not Genesis works well with exotic matter. And for Luke, since Luke thinks more probably of components, exotic matter is a retail product that includes all the promos and the 48 modules that are bonus modules. So, and it also includes mechanisms for the hive and the ancient brain. So the question is, does Genesis work with, the flame keepers? Does it work with the hive? Does it work with those metamorphosis modules? So that's that. The question.
The answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, 100%.
In fact, all of that stuff is in my copy that I play test with all the time. You mentioned new raiders, because like when it's with raiders, if you use one raider, you might not use another raider, and so you might use a raider instead of the Void Drake, for example. So that would be something that you wouldn't use side by side.
But I believe we just played a game with Lauren, and Lauren was playing the Flame Keepers, and it's interesting. She showed how powerful those can be, and so I think it's going to be very. So we've always play tested the game with all the promos included, and since Luke just mentioned new raiders, there's going to be new raiders, because when we first came out with the game, this is something that not a lot of people pointed out to me, but some did, which is that we had 3 A's and 3 C's and 3 D's, but we only had 2 B's. So you could better believe there's another B raider coming. But then there's also, because we couldn't help ourselves, another category will get larger, but at least the B's will round itself out with a third one. When designing a game, do you use mathematics such as black skulls to ensure balance? Or do you rely on playtesting and subjective opinions / keeping count of game results? I mean, this one can be basically, do you work in a mathematical model, or are you going by your gut?
Well, I'm not Heisenberg, but I have taught math and science for a lot of years, and I do have both. I've got some hard math skills, and I have math and science heuristics. But my belief about game design is that it's more like systems design than it is strict calculable mathematics. And in fact, some of the systems we design, because of the choices involved and the permutations, you actually reach incalculable levels of complexity. And as a result of it being beyond strict calculation, working more in a sense of using heuristics. So I have to use judgment, and using that judgment. There is documentation. We are looking at scores of things. We're looking at what potential things have in the game. So a lot of things that come down to balance are about looking at what the limits should be and looking at the possible iterations. So if there's something that can be repeated and repeated and repeated, you want to watch, do you have to constrain the usage of that thing, or do you have to change its value? With costs, you can create mechanics where the costs can vary and they come down to player choice. So sliding markets do this real nicely. I don't have to assign a perfect value of a cost to a card. The player is going to decide if that card is worth it to them at that time, at that cost. So
yeah, it's really interesting.
It takes away the need to have kind of this one-to-one correspondence between cost and result.
Yeah, to me, what's really interesting about how that plays out in real time is that some people will look at Andromeda's Edge and they'll say, hey, that card and that card are the same cost, but that one's better. So clearly this is a mistake. And I've even had that same gut reaction. But as Luke has pointed out to me many times, it's the circumstances. Like sometimes you just need an energy. You need to get that card, even though it's the slightly worse one. That's the one that's available to you. If that's not worth it to you, then you take a different action in the game. You go do something else. You could mathematically say that there's something incorrect about the design, but it's not true when you get the feel of when you get the proportion of the event cards in front of you and the proportion of the modules and all of the stuff mixes together in a pot, and you're like, actually, that's perfect. That there's this discrepancy, that there's this not perfect result.
We get this idea that things need to be equal for them to be fair.
Yeah.
And equal doesn't necessarily mean fair when it comes down to results from investment. So giving people more interesting choices and having those values vary is what makes it fun.
A lot of people also think that in Andromeda's Edge, if you go fourth and you just get one extra point, because there's a point differential. So first gets 1 point, second gets 2 points, third gets 3 points, fourth gets 4 points. Someone will say, hey, you know what? I don't think 1 point's enough because when I take the fourth turn, it's likely someone's been to the 2 module fields, as if their choices that are left over are not as good as a module field. But usually that comes at the cost of somebody leaving a very juicy moon, not building a ship to get into the nebula first, tackling a raider now to get exotech. So there's actually there's tons of options that if you were to strictly look at it from there must be 4 equal module fields for all 4 players to land on in 4 turns is not the correct answer to that equation. Especially because the game, in this particular case, we're talking about Andromeda's Edge specifically, the game is asynchronous, meaning that someone could pull back at a different time than me. There are certain powers of the game that actually are better if you time them right when everyone's left the board. And so there's a lot of fun things there. What upgrades and content will be juicy for solo gamers out there in the AE expansion? Now, it should be noted that the first Andromeda's Edge expansion, which is called Escalation, is what brings solo play, period. So we're designing this one to not be a solo expansion, but yet all the content will work with solo. At least that's the intent, right?
Yeah. I can't think of anything that doesn't go right in and work with solo. So Unity is going to interact with these new things and will both benefit from and then have to face these challenges as well. So with every component being added, Unity has been considered. So solo players will just be able to bring it right in.
Also, I will say that Luke has been building on the lore of who Unity is, what Unity is. So we'll have a little bit more lore with Genesis in terms of now you've settled on these planets. You're starting to be at home in Andromeda's Edge. But that's when you find out the deep secrets of what is happening with Unity.
And Unity is growing stronger. And, somebody's going to have to build up the strength and go face Unity someday.
Nice. Are you planning on a deluxe and standard edition of Genesis and just the one version? So how we're going to handle this is a really good question. We're going to make Genesis have it's a standard edition Genesis, right? There are no parts in it other than the 2 raiders that would need to be deluxified. And the way we're going to handle that is that the raiders are going to be the deluxified versions. We're going to treat the 2 raiders that we're going to build. We're going to put them in deluxe form in this otherwise standard box. So that does mean that if you buy Genesis and you are a standard edition player, you will have 2 pieces that look a little different. But everything else is a card or a tile or a component that will fit right in with both versions, no problem. And then for the deluxe owners, you're not going to have something that's not a mini because you will have these 2 raiders be something physical in your set. We didn't really want to maintain 2 versions of Genesis going forward because it's very complex to do that, especially making sure these are available after the campaign and in the right version would be a lot of work. So we're going to make it work for all versions. A deluxe Unity space station. Well, these are fun things to think about.
I'm sorry, Mark. I think that might be a whole different game.
Yeah. Well, we'll get there, apparently.
For better or worse.
Yep. What are your favorite game snacks? Is this related to the Cheeto conversation?
My favorite game snack is whiskey.
Look at this, is like a Cardboard Alchemy specific thing right here. That's a potion.
So it was my birthday just last week, and Father's Day and retirement and all that. And it was Sergio's birthday too.
That's right.
Me, Maximus, and Sergio's birthday all within a week.
And Chris Strain as well.
And Chris. They all worked on Andromeda. Who else? Is it anybody else around?
Lauren. I know Lauren works on Andromeda. She has a June birthday as well. And I believe we have more June birthdays in our, collaborators than any other month.
So my wife got me this. She got a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons themed prizes, gifts for my.
That's a nice bottle right there.
And
I officially commandeered that bottle for the studio. That's kidding.
Yeah. Aside from drinking alcohol, we try to actually eat kind of healthy when we game. So, we'll get so I live in Santa Maria, California, and Mexican food is great and everywhere. So we might get a bunch of salsas and chips and beans and rice, and the chips that we get are, they're those real tortilla chips made out of real corn tortillas. So we eat real food generally,
I like making a homemade guac. I really do. So to me, a great snack is to have salsa and guac and chips. I think those are great. Not quite as dusty as Cheetos, so you get away with it at a game table.
I am fine with playing with the food and the drinks, right on the table and stuff. We try to be a little bit careful, but somebody totally spilled whiskey on my Andromeda board. The designer's board got whiskey on it. Anyway.
I just made some extra nebula spaces is what that made. Well, let's see if we have any other ones, but if we did not get to your question, you can always ask in this YouTube. You can say, put the question up. Rosie and I will make sure that we get that question to Luke or answer it in the next stream. You can ask on our Discord. You can come to play Andromeda's Edge Genesis on our Discord. You can also ask in our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group for Andromeda's Edge. You can talk about it there. And soon you can go to GameFound and ask questions over there. We're going to get a lot more active on GameFound as we ramp up to the launch event of Genesis. So we can get more questions in over there, but I appreciate everybody who's come on the stream to say hello. We'll do a lot more streams with Luke and a lot more games. I hope everybody has a good weekend of gaming. I'm going to play Andromeda's Edge right now is what I'm going to do.
I think I might be playing later, and I'm going to go to PolyCon San Luis Obispo.
That's right. You're doing PolyCon this weekend, and then next weekend you're doing RageCon. So you're high level here.
I need a convention to go to as soon as I get back from RageCon.
Okay, we got to fly to Dice Tower East right after that if we really want to.
All right, this is great. I was glad to be
everybody, here. And the best games are yet to be made, as we say.